Welcome inside this midweek edition of Big Ten Today. Rick Pizzo, thrilled to be joined by Trent Meacham. I see you got the memo this morning.
Repping the network. Let's go.
We promise that this, by the way, is a fire alarm-free show over the course of the next 60 minutes. I've never seen that before in a college basketball game.
I have neither. You know, it was tied up with 10 minutes left. And the crazy thing is both teams really had a pretty good flow after that. It was a great ball game, but that was interesting, Rick.
That is how we get into today's big story and a look back at Tuesday's scores from the Big Ten, the game we're referencing in Assembly Hall. A fire alarm goes off. Badgers had been down by 13 in the first half, battled back, unable to get it done. Khalil Ware's NBA stock just continues to rise and rise, 27-11, as the Badgers, once 8-1 in the Big Ten, fall to 10-7 in the league, certainly at risk now of not getting that double bye, having to start the tournament on Thursday. Iowa, a must-win game for the Hawkeyes to keep their tournament hopes alive. Get a triple-double from Peyton Sandford, 26-10-10, as the Hawkeyes knock off a game Penn State team. 90-81 is the final. Let's start with Wisconsin, Indiana. We'll get to Khalil Ware. We'll get to the Hoosiers, because I thought the fight that Indiana showed with not a ton to play for was phenomenal and deserves a ton of credit. I'm just wondering right now what's going on with Wisconsin. These are the games that for the first 2.5, even 3 months of the season, they were finding a way to win. Now they're finding a way to lose.
Yeah, I think shooting is one thing. Look, they took 22 more shots than Indiana last night, but they did not shoot the ball well. They haven't shot it well from the three for a while now, and that's a big concern. I also thought defensively, okay, I know you have your principles, you have your pack line defense, you're a compact defense, but when you have a guy like Khalil Ware going off, him and Malik Renew went 17 for 20 from the field. We all know Indiana's not a great three-point shooting team. If I'm the other team, I am selling out on the post, trying to take away the paint. I don't know.
Force them to make shots.
Well, they got to make shots. That's on defensively. Against Indiana, the game plan, you got to sell out on the post. You got to double team, bring a lot of heat down there, make Indiana make shots. They shot it well, but only made 6 threes. That's not a ton of threes. And then offensively, they got to shoot the ball better. I feel like sometimes they want to run the clock so badly, they're passing up looks, good looks, open looks. So that would be the two things that I see.
Scoreless over the final 2 minutes and change in that loss. How concerned are you? Is this fixable for Wisconsin before you get into the postseason, or are we too late in the year?
Is it fixable? Yes, I think it is, because they have the talent and the depth there. But I'm concerned. I'm concerned. They play Illinois on Saturday. They play Rutgers, who ran them out of the gym a few weeks ago. Then they finish at Purdue. They could easily go 0-3 in those games. They've lost 6 of their 8. That would not be how you want to enter the Big Ten tournament, the NCAA tournament. So can they right this? Yes. I thought a bright spot was Chucky Hepburn. He had 15 points, 7 rebounds, 6 assists. His aggressiveness, taking 12 field goal attempts, I like that. They need him being aggressive, because that can open it up for others. Blackwell was aggressive as well. You know, he was banged up for a little while, and I think that hurt them, because he brings so many different things to the team. A.J. Storr was more aggressive in the second half. So there's some good things to build on, but I'm very concerned defensively. They're not where they need to be, and it's inexplainable why they didn't sell out more in the post, and offensively got to play with some more pace.
Folks are asking a legitimate question, because you bring up the possibility of Wisconsin losing its final 3 games. Then you'd be 10-10 in the league, heading into the Big Ten tournament. Then if you lose your first tournament game, the question is, could Wisconsin actually be in danger after that 8-1 Big Ten start of missing the NCAA tournament? I'm pretty sure the answer is no, just because their resume includes so many quality wins, and the committee is not supposed to put any more emphasis late in the season as they do early in the season. So I think Wisconsin's safe. I know that Greg Gard and the Badgers don't want to be involved in that conversation, but that's the situation right now. On the flip side, let's give a ton of credit to Indiana. There's a team that knows it's not going to the NCAA tournament unless it makes a run in Minneapolis. You have some guys like Ware and others who could be thinking about the NBA. They balled out on Tuesday night. I thought what they did, especially Khalil Ware, was really impressive.
27 points, 11 rebounds, 5 blocks, impacted the game at a high level on both ends of the floor. Probably affected another 5 shots as well for Wisconsin. What I was really impressed with, his ability to finish, to make plays on the move. So a lot of the times he's screening, rolling to the basket, whether it's a lob, and sometimes it's not there for the dunk. It's tip-ins, it's catching it, attacking closeouts. Was really impressive, finishing through contact. He looked like an NBA player. We've seen him, obviously, the thing on him coming into this year was, does he have the motor? Does he have the intensity that he's going to need? Well, he started the season well, but he's made a big improvement from November to now. And last night he put it all on display, knocked down a three, showed his mid-range game. So when you have the best player on the court, you can play through that. And that's what Indiana did. And then Malik Renew had some questionable fouls, but he was effective too, 14 and 8, 6 and 8 from the field. So those two big guys go 2 for 2 from three, 17 for 20 from the field. They really dominated the game in the paint. And then you got to give credit to Trey Galloway, 12 assists, 2 turnovers. He really set the tempo for them.
I chuckle when you're talking about questionable decisions by Renew because when the 5th foul occurred, Mike Woodson almost lost his mind. And I think that's a great sign because I think there are some folks out there questioning how invested he is maybe in the rest of the year with this team. He's invested. Trust me. His reaction last night showed it all, as did Indiana's performance, 74-70 over the Badgers in a fire alarm-aided win inside Assembly Hall. Second game of the night was Penn State-Iowa, a game you saw right here on the Big Ten Network. Peyton Sanford was terrific, a game the Hawkeyes knew they had to win, and to me, this is the style of play that Iowa has to play. If Iowa is able to force its opposition to play at this pace, this kind of frantic up and down, and also allow Iowa to get into its stuff offensively, and Sanford can not just score but can create as well, Tony Perkins and all these different pieces, this is an Iowa team. I've been saying this for about 6 weeks now. Among all the bubble teams, I think this is the team that, if they get in, can do the most damage.
I wouldn't disagree with you, Rick, and you nailed it. Iowa, it's all about pace, tempo, and I thought last night, I would say they dictated the terms of the game, how this game is going to be played. That's what Penn State, Mike Rhodes, wants to do with their pressure, their kind of hectic style, but Iowa, from the beginning, got up 29-12. It's tough to come back from that deficit. But just, hey, this is how we're going to play. We're going to play fast. It's going to be free-flowing. And Rick, you mentioned the Iowa's stuff. And I love watching them play because they have some great quick hitters and sets, but a lot of it is, I would call it random basketball. These guys aren't just running plays. They're making plays. And it can come from so many different guys, so many different angles. Peyton Sanford with that triple-double last night. I mean, the first half, 8 assists. Wasn't really a factor scoring the ball, but his 8 assists, Josh Dix followed up a 20-point performance against Illinois with another 20 points. I mean, Tony Perkins was quiet in the first half. He got going in the second half. So many different guys. It's random. It's in motion. It's in space. Their passing was exceptional, 22 assists. So they're fun to watch, and they really don't do it again from the three-point line as much as they have in the past, but they're so effective, and it's so many different guys that can do the job.
Well, I think that's actually a good sign that they didn't have to rely on the three, because Peyton Sanford, who is known as a three-point shooter, but obviously you go for a triple-double, you can do a lot more than that. He scored what? 2/3, maybe more than that of his points at the free throw line. He's a deadly free throw shooter, but he was being aggressive. He was going to the rack. You bring up the randomness. There is some of that, but I think that's the way that Fran McCaffrey coaches. Part of what he does is instills this belief and confidence in his guys that if they get a good shot, they're not a team that's going to pass up a good shot. No, and I think that's a really good thing when you get into a tournament scenario.
Well, again, I think I would love to watch them practice in the offseason more, just how Coach McCaffrey coaches them up. And it's not just running plays. Hey, I'm teaching you how to make a play, how to play with four other teammates, 9 other guys on the court. Where is everybody driving, kicking, and the players are interchangeable. A lot of different guys will bring the ball up the floor. So I love that. It's very hard to scout against when you're playing that style. And also, Fran McCaffrey, it seems like he gives guys confidence. Whether it's Brock Harding off the bench, Dembele, everybody comes in like ready to play, believing in themselves. And then finally, I say the Peyton Sanford, the triple-double was fun to watch, and he wanted it. His teammates wanted it. But he just seems like a great teammate, a great leader. He plays with a competitive joy that I think is rare, and I believe he is the guy that's kind of spearheaded this turnaround late season. So it was great to see him get rewarded with those numbers. But man, I think as a leader, he's top notch.
So from a player's perspective, what's the difference in terms of running plays or making plays? Because you look at Iowa's guys and you say forever, for as long as Fran has been there, there are a multitude of guys who can get their own, right? They don't need help. Is that what you mean?
Well, I think he teaches them, one, he develops them at their skill. So they can go and make a play. He recruits guys that can dribble, pass, and shoot. Might sound simple, but not a lot of teams don't have guys that can do that. And they typically will have 4, sometimes 5 guys on the court that does that. But then how they play together. Basketball is not an individual game. So they're cutting, they're passing, they're spacing, their ball movement. It's year in, year out. It's the best typically in the Big Ten. So it's a skill point, but it's also a confidence. And I think he kind of lets them play through mistakes, and therefore they typically make fewer mistakes because they're playing fearless basketball.
And I know the recent names, obviously, the Murray twins and then Luka Garza, but you go further back than that, and the development of guys like Joe Wieskamp and Jared Utoff and Aaron White. I go all the way back to when he was hired in 2010. There are guys every year that get significantly better under the tutelage of Fran McCaffery. Big reason why the Hawkeyes are back in the conversation for this year's NCAA tournament. Rick Pizzo back with my Big Ten Today twin, Trent Meacham. Let's start with the game in Champaign. The Illini and Gophers. Illinois comes off that win over Iowa. Tight late, and then they start to pull away, win by 10. Coleman Hawkins, just phenomenal. I want to see this team really put it together over the last couple of weeks of the regular season and then heading into the tournament, because I believe that if they get the right matchups, they are a team that can go all the way to the Final Four.
We were talking about this. Yeah, I said Final Four. You said, hey, I could see them
winning it all or losing it in the first or second round.
And I agree. Look, 84 points a game. First in Big Ten play, number 4 in offensive efficiency in the country. They're scoring the ball better than I thought they would this year. Now they're one of the worst defensive teams. They're giving up 76 points a game in Big Ten play. I don't know how that's possible with this lineup. So they got to be better defensively. I think they could be more disruptive, more active when we think about putting it all together. Mm-hmm. I think it starts for them defensively. And here's the thing, too, Rick. If they can get stops, then what? You got the best player in transition in the country in Terrence Shannon Jr. You have a guy like Coleman Hawkins. He went for 30 points, 5 assists, 5 steals at 6'10" last game. So he can push the ball in transition. They could be so good there. And if they can get some stops, man, it could be dangerous for them. But they got to get stops for it. They got to be better there. And tonight, I think the key will be, I'm really looking forward to these matchups, but on the inside. Dawson Garcia, kind of like Coleman Hawkins, one of the more gifted, versatile players. Pharrell Payne, I think, could cause some troubles for the Illini as well.
I wonder if for Brad Underwood, and this is a problem that a lot of coaches would love to have, he can mix and match. There are so many different lineups he can use because of the length of his guys, because they're so unique in that Ty Rodgers is a 6'8" rebounding machine that can play the point. I wonder if the mixing and matching is what makes the defense a little bit harder, because I think offensively it's easier to get into a flow with a different group of guys. I think defensively, that's where you really see the chemistry come to the forefront.
Yeah, I typically would probably look at the other way, where offense, the rhythm and flow can be harder.
I don't think that's the case with this team.
Well, it's not with this team. Typically, that's what I would think, and that's why it's kind of a head scratcher when I look at the individual talent of the defenders, their length, their athleticism, and what I think, I've said this before, I think the Illini should be able to change things up. If you're playing the same way against talented teams, talented players, they're going to figure out, okay, where can I get to, and they're going to exploit that. But with their experience, it's not like it's a young group where we have simple rules. They should be able to change things up. I think they could be more disruptive. I've seen that a little bit, doubling the post, being more aggressive on ball screens. But that's what I would like to see them do here. And tonight, I mentioned the inside, but also Elijah Hawkins. Containing him will be really important. Their last 2 wins, he's averaged 20.7 assists. In their last 3 losses, 5 points, 5 assists. So keeping him out of the paint and taking away the 3 ball alongside with those post players, we'll see how Illinois responds defensively tonight. Yeah,
that Northwestern did a terrific job against Hawkins. I also think this Minnesota team and Ben Johnson, they deserve a ton of credit.
They do.
I said Northwestern, I meant Nebraska. I just think Ben Johnson has been phenomenal. They're 8-8. I mean, they have a chance to be 500 or better in the league. They didn't return a ton of guys. He brought in some really good transfers. I know they're playing for this year, but quickly, when you start to think about if everybody comes back, and that's a big if he's able to keep these guys in Minneapolis, this team could be nasty next season.
Well, they could be, but hey, Rick, I will also say this is a massive game for them. For them, they're on the other side of the bubble, maybe not even on the bubble yet, and to have an opportunity to go on the road against a team like Illinois, this is a game for Minnesota. They knocked down some threes. They played Purdue tight just recently on the road. If they would get one, that would be massive for their tournament implications.
Yeah, I'm with you. I know you and I had this disagreement a little bit on Tuesday. I don't think they're on the bubble right now. You win this game, absolutely. They're a team that is on the NCAA tournament bubble. The other Wednesday night game sees Northwestern travel to College Park. I think this game has become a little bit more intriguing because Maryland and Julian Reese specifically looked really good last time out. Northwestern's done a great job without Ty Berry, but going on the road to play at College Park is going to be anything but easy for the Cats.
Well, the first thing is look, this point guard matchup. Boo Buie and Jameer Young, two of the best in the country. That first game, Jameer Young went for 36 points. Got to the free throw line 11 times. But Boo Buie, 20 points, 7 assists, hit the game winner, got the stop. Great defense on Young in the final possession, forced a tough shot. So that matchup will be really fun to watch. It'll also be interesting. Who guards Jameer Young initially? I know the Wildcats will switch a lot, but there's no Ty Berry. That was kind of their best defender on the perimeter. I would expect Langborg to get that first shot. And then on the other end, you mentioned Julian Reese. Only 10 points, only 8 shots in that first matchup, 5 or 6 turnovers too. Northwestern's going to be doubling the post. So how does Reese handle that? And then can guys like Geronimo, Scott, Kaiser knock down some threes because they're going to have some openings tonight.
And defensively right now, Maryland, I mean, what the Terps did to Rutgers, I think they held them to 18 points in the first half of that game in a tough place to play on the road. I think that gives this team a ton of confidence. I also think that we need to give more credit to Chris Collins. I think he's not getting enough credit for the job he's done this year. Now, he's the reigning Big Ten Coach of the Year. And because of that, I think it's taken away from the fact that you can make an argument he's done a better job this year than he did a year ago with this team. He and Coach Lowry are key to the development of Boo Buie. I mentioned the injury to Ty Berry. Nick Martinelli mixes right in. They have a lot of different parts. They don't expect a ton from their bigs, but they've taught them the right way to play and to give them just enough. If, in fact, Northwestern, and right now they're on pace, goes back to the NCAA tournament for a second consecutive year, and it would be the first time in program history, I still believe Fred Hoiberg is the leading candidate for Big Ten Coach of the Year. Chris Collins needs to be in the conversation.
I think that the job this year, I would agree, is probably a better job for Collins this year than last year. With Berry's injury, with how they developed this team, their defense has improved a lot throughout the course of the season. Development of players, you mentioned Boo Buie. I think about Nick Martinelli, staying ready. He was a sixth man. Now he stepped in as a starter, playing very well. Matt Nicholson has played better. This team is incredibly tough. They're the Iron Men of the Big Ten. All these guys are playing 30-plus minutes. And I'll say finally, Rick, though, Maryland, great job, defense against Rutgers. This is a different animal tonight. The Wildcats
totally
are, okay? In terms of three-point shooting, they lead the Big Ten, 43% in Big Ten play. And even with Berry out, they haven't struggled as much from beyond the arc. Last game, 10 for 22 against Michigan. So this team can still space the floor. They can still fill it up from deep. That's a different challenge for Maryland than what they just had against Rutgers.
That being said, Maryland, and I'm not sure if you would agree with this or not, I think they're a team that has to start on Thursday because they'll wear out if you start on Wednesday in the Big Ten tournament. You get the right matchups in starting on Thursday. If you can play defensively the way that they've been playing as of late, I think they're a team that could knock off 1 or 2 higher-seeded teams in Minneapolis.
There's no doubt. Probably the best defensive team in the Big Ten. You got the best scoring point guard possibly in the country in Jameer Young.
One of the most clutch.
That you can play through. Yes, Reese in the low post. For them, defense, you got the star power. It's all about can some other guy, can Jordan Geronimo, Jamie Kaiser, Deshaun Harris-Smith, can one of those guys give them 10 points, okay? Then when that happens, man, they can beat anybody.
Dante Scott as well. Geronimo had 11 points, 11 rebounds in that win over Rutgers. You give Kevin Willard 11 and 11 from Geronimo. If Dante Scott is also in double figures, I think he takes his chances against pretty much anybody in the Big Ten, maybe save Purdue when you get into the Big Ten tournament down in Minneapolis. Back on Big Ten today with a look at the up-to-the-minute women's basketball standings. A lot to digest here. Now, Ohio State has clinched a share of the Big Ten regular season title and the number 1 seed in next week's tournament. Buckeyes can win the league outright with a win over Michigan. That would be very fitting. That's the only team to hand Ohio State a conference loss this year. Indiana, Iowa sitting there with 3 losses each. Nebraska and Michigan State battling for that all-important 4th spot. That means you get a double bye. Don't have to play until Friday. They're tied in the loss column. Of course, Michigan State will play 1 additional game than Nebraska. Some other teams to focus on: Penn State, Maryland, Michigan, some teams maybe on the NCAA tournament bubble heading into the last 5 days of the regular season. And with all that in mind, welcoming women's basketball analyst and NCAA bracketologist for the women's game, Autumn Johnson. Autumn, let's start at the top with Ohio State. Buckeyes have been phenomenal. They're number 2 in the country. It's unlikely Ohio State or anyone can catch up to South Carolina before the NCAA tournament bracket is filled out. But have the Buckeyes shown you enough that they could maybe be the number 2 overall seed? And how dangerous are they heading into the tournament?
100%. They're a lock on that one line as that top spot for me on my one line for my bracketology. They are the full package. They have the number 1 defense in the Big Ten, and most of their success is a tribute to that press that they love to run, that 2-2-1 or either 1-2-2 press, forcing their opponents to turn the ball over nearly 21 times a game. And I knew their defense was going to be even scarier going into this season when they secured Celeste Taylor during the offseason, one of the top transfers in the country. She was a Naismith semifinalist for DPOY. She leads the Buckeyes in blocks. She leads the conference in steals. This team is deep on that end, and they also have depth on the offensive end, and they can get scoring from just about anywhere with J.C. Sheldon, as I mentioned, Celeste Taylor, Taylor Theory, Rebecca Mikolashikova, Cody McMahon as well. I feel like whenever Cody McMahon played versus Iowa and had that career high of 33 points, this was the turning point for the Buckeyes. This team is going to be just as dangerous, especially when Cody is playing at that high level. They're riding on a 14-game winning streak right now, which includes 2 top 10 wins over Indiana and Iowa. And their only losses to Michigan, they'll get them again tonight. They close out the regular season versus Iowa. I think if not, going down the stretch, this is a Final Four team when it's all said and done. I've been saying this during the preseason. I've been saying it throughout the course of the season. And now they're proving just why they should be in that conversation.
Kevin McGuff has also done a terrific job this year. I know Robin Fralick will be in the conversation for Big Ten Coach of the Year as well. But if the Buckeyes win out, have just one loss regular season, number 1 overall seed, hard not to peg McGuff as the Big Ten Coach of the Year. You brought up Iowa. Hawkeyes have lost 2 of their last 4. And let's be honest, as I watched, I think other people believe this too. It looks like Caitlin Clark is physically getting a little bit tired, and we would certainly understand if emotionally she's a little bit exhausted after all the pressure that she's carried over the course of this season and her career. How concerned are you with Iowa heading into the postseason?
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, there's a lot of attention surrounding Caitlin Clark right now as the all-time leading scorer in women's basketball for the NCAA side. And the media, trying to put up just as much quality production throughout the course of the season to keep her team on top. But I'm not pressing the panic button on this team, especially with any team that has Caitlin Clark on it. We already know Caitlin Clark is going to get hers, and she's going to take this team far. But for me, it's going to be seeing what the supporting cast does moving down the stretch, and if they're clicking at the right time. That's what's going to take this team far. That's what's going to give them another championship run to run it back as the Big Ten favorites and champs in this conference and try to get back to that throne when it comes to the NCAA tournament. But, Gabby Marshall, we watched her just turn it on during the Big Ten tournament last year. She hit 13 threes in the course of that tournament last season and 7 alone versus Maryland in the semifinals. We've seen Kate Martin also get great numbers throughout the course of the season. And some of those numbers were overlooked, obviously, with, the number 1 offense in the nation. There's so many pieces like a Caitlin Clark who's going to get 40 one night and your numbers might get overshadowed. But Kate Martin does so much for this team on both ends of the floor. Hannah Stolke has gotten a 47-point game versus Penn State. We saw that. She's the top 2 scorer for Iowa. They have the pieces to bring home another Big Ten title. My only concern, as I mentioned, is just if it comes all together and if it's consistent down the stretch, not only in the Big Ten tournament, but in the postseason when we get to March for the NCAA tournament time. So when you look across the nation, as we mentioned earlier, South Carolina, having that balanced deep team and Ohio State having another balanced team, I think that's what's going to take for everyone to be clicking at the right moment in order to make a deep run.
And, of course, we'll see Ohio State and Iowa, final day of the regular season. Hawkeyes trying to get a little bit of revenge after that unbelievable win by Ohio State in overtime in Columbus. I want to touch on Indiana because that win over Iowa, as good as the Hoosiers have been, not just this year, but over the course of the last couple of years, it's hard to believe that was their first victory this year over a ranked opponent. How did that kind of affect the way that you feel about the Hoosiers' postseason opportunities?
Yeah, we looked at those games against Stanford earlier on in the season, and we saw how that went down with a double-digit loss. But coming up to this Iowa team, they've already faced them as well, and that was another game that was decided by double figures. But the way they were able to come off of a loss to Illinois and then come in with kind of a vengeance in their mind to get this one done, to take care of a business, they felt embarrassed by that game. So, being challenged to respond, and their response was in a major way that put them in the conversation to possibly host as one of the top 16 teams in the nation when it comes down to the NCAA tournament. I have them as a 4 seed because of that game that was able to push them in. But the defense is what got it done in this matchup versus Iowa. The fact that Chloe Moore McNeil did an amazing job, in my opinion, guarding Caitlin Clark, even though she still flirted with a triple double. As we mentioned, Caitlin Clark is always going to get hers, but this team didn't allow everyone else to go off. Kate Martin had 19 points. Hannah Stolke had 10 points. Everyone else had single digits. So I thought they did a great job guarding multiple actions. They were disciplined. They were poised. They held Iowa to 11 points in the second quarter. This Indiana team, when they're successful, they hang their hats on defense at all times, and they have the offense as well. They have all the pieces who can score inside and out. Mackenzie Holmes, as we know, one of the best posts in the nation, one of the best rim protectors as well. And they have big guards to do it as well with Sarah Scalia, Sydney Parrish, three-point nightmares, Moore McNeil, as we mentioned, and Yarden Gardzone. I feel like they're the full package as well, and they displayed that in the Iowa game.
That Moore McNeil, remarkably underrated, had a triple-double earlier this year. One of those players who could do just a little bit of everything for her team. I want to focus on that race now for the double bye. It's between Nebraska and Michigan State. And viewers out there, get your pencils down to write this down. Nebraska has a half-game lead right now, but the Huskers only play one game remaining. Michigan State has two. They both play Illinois. Michigan State also plays Wisconsin. Now, if it comes down to the head-to-head and they're tied together, Nebraska beat Michigan State in their one meeting, but there are other tiebreaker possibilities. How much do you think that double bye really matters to either of these teams? And are both these teams capable of making a run in the tournament, regardless of whether they start on Thursday or Friday?
Yeah, I think it matters for both teams if you get that double bye. That's what everyone's eyeing right now, for an opportunity for you to get some rest and possibly, avoid teams and those upsets we saw last year. Was crazy in the Big Ten tournament if you were playing on those first 2 days. So you want to avoid that. But also, it kind of gives you momentum if you do play those first 2 days and you get a feel for the court, the fans, and everything. But for me, if I'm on that side of it, I want 2 days off so I can prepare and try to stay safe down the stretch, because this is a deep Big Ten conference. But if I were to give the edge to anyone in this, I would give it to Michigan State. I've been high on them all season long because I love what Robin Fralick has done with this team and how this team has bought in just her first year as a head coach. What they're doing on both ends is remarkable. They're the number 2 offense in the Big Ten. They're connected always. They're always passing up a good shot for a great shot, as you see in these highlights. And, they're number 2 in turnover margin. They're turning opponents over at least 18 times with their press. It kind of makes me think a little bit about Ohio State and what they're doing defensively. So the fact that they're bought in on both ends and they're scary on both ends and they have the pieces, the tools, and just different versatility. Like, this team is, if you're not watching closely on this team, I would say they're a sleeper pick because no one's really paying attention what Michigan State is doing. But if you look at some of their losses, they're not bad. Ohio State, they almost knocked them off. Iowa, they almost knocked them off. Indiana, same thing as well. All decided by single digits. They are right there in this game. And I would say, if anything, I would give it to Michigan State for what they've been able to do this season.
All right, Autumn, before we wrap up, I think we have about 90 seconds. So let's spend about 30 seconds each on 3 other teams that are part of your bracket, either last in, first 4 out. We start with Michigan. What do the Wolverines have to do to secure a spot in the tournament?
They have to continue to just win out. I mean, like we mentioned, Ohio State tonight, that's going to be a big matchup for them. They've already seen this team. So if they can get the job done tonight, that would be huge for this team. Also, Penn State and Maryland are 2 11 seeds that I have in my bracket. Penn State kind of struggling with some woes down the stretch of the season with injury. Missing Tay Valladay has been crucial for this team. In Maryland, they have some quality net 50 wins. They're going to have to try to make a deep run also in the Big Ten tournament to try to play it safe and make it into the tournament. But don't sleep on the Nebraska as well. I know we touched a little bit on them. I have them as an 8 seed. They have a huge win over Iowa in their bracket. Or in my bracket, that's what allowed them to get my 8 seed. So we'll see how it all pans out. But there's a lot of tough teams that can make and solidify their name into my bracketology.
Yeah, 8 teams projected right now. 5 look really, really solid. Maryland, Michigan, Penn State, those teams that probably have to do something the rest of this week and maybe next week in Minneapolis at the Big Ten tournament. As always, Autumn Johnson dropping some key knowledge on us in the world of women's basketball. Autumn, I know it is a crazy busy time for you. We appreciate you taking some time with us here on Big Ten Today.
Thank you so much.
For today's big interview, as you welcome in the leading scorer for the Badgers, Cruz Lucius. Cruz, I guess this is exactly what we want to play for, right? You have no idea at the beginning of the year that the schedule is going to shake out the way that it did, but you have the top 2 teams playing for the regular season title. How excited are you guys to host this series this weekend?
Yeah, super excited. I think it's obviously awesome to be in your, home arena, and, it's something our team's been looking forward to for a while now, so.
What's that environment been like this year in Madison, especially against quality opponents and series that mean a lot? I've been watching, I've been listening in, haven't been lucky enough to actually be there, but it looks like the fan base is all the way back and it's a huge home ice edge.
Yeah, I mean, it's awesome. I think, seeing whatever 13,000 fans has been, super cool. And obviously the students have been great too. So it's been a big help for our team, and, it's brought a lot of energy for our team, and I think has been a big part of our success.
Now, Michigan State obviously got the first 2 against you guys earlier this year in East Lansing. When you look back at that film, what were they able to do that weekend?
Yeah, I actually, I was sick that weekend. I didn't play, but just watching, I mean, they're a big physical team. They're obviously super offensive, but they also are obviously pretty good in the D zone too. So they're just a really good overall team. So I think that's, kind of what we had trouble with. But going into this weekend, just kind of going back to, watching film, seeing what we can improve on. So I think that's going to be a big help for us.
Without you being able to be in that lineup during that trip to East Lansing earlier this year, how much more fired up does that make you to get back on the ice for this return series in Madison?
Yeah, I mean, I'm super excited. It's going to be a big test for us. Obviously, they got us pretty good those first 2 games, but I think me and obviously the team is super excited to get back at them. So.
It's been a huge turnaround from last year to this year for you guys, not just in terms of wins and losses, but it seems like there's a different feeling right now around the program. How would you describe kind of the change, whether it's the culture that Coach Hastings brought or just the difference in how it feels inside the room this year?
Yeah, I mean, I think a big thing for us is kind of living in the moment, taking it day by day. I think not really looking at the games ahead, but kind of just looking at the practice we have, that day or the workout. I think that's been a big part of our team's success and is, what's helped us, improve a lot this year.
As far as on the ice, how would you describe the chemistry, specifically, obviously, on your line, but also among all 4 lines and the guys who patrol the back end as well?
Yeah, I think, for my line, I've been playing with Maddie D. St. Fallon, Celia pretty much the whole year. And, for us, it's really, we always kind of say, defense leads offense. So I think that's a big part for us, as we know kind of what we're capable in the offensive zone. But, what we've done, our whole game has been really, really well. And that's what's led us to our success. And I think, as a team, every line on our team can score. And obviously our defensemen too are, really shut down, but also can produce offensively. So, having that as a team where every guy, can make a big impact is huge for us.
For someone who may be getting their first look at you individually, do your best to kind of describe your style of play and what you think you're doing when you're playing at your best.
Yeah, I mean, I think when I'm at my best, I'm moving my feet, and obviously I think my playmaking is a big part of my game, and, always wanting the puck on my stick has been something I've always kind of put around my game and my offensive capabilities, I think is my strong suit.
18 assists this season, kind of backing that up. I want to ask about some of your teammates. I'm going to start with Simon Tassi, a guy who just seems to always be kind of in the right place at the right time. He's already got 4 game-winning goals. What is it about Simon and players like him that just seem to be able to come up with the goals when the team needs it the most?
Yeah, I mean, he's a guy that kind of always has a chip on his shoulder, and he's not afraid to get in there. And I had the opportunity to play a couple games with him, and he just brings a lot of energy to our line, or to like his line, and then as a team, he brings a lot of energy every game. So he's he's somebody that our team's really looked on for those big time moments. And then obviously, him coming in this year, he's been a huge help to our team.
Cruz, you mentioned already how important defense is to this team, that it's kind of the backbone of everything that you guys do, and that means you need a good goaltender. You haven't had a good goaltender this year. You've had one of the best, if not the best, goaltenders in the country in Kyle McClellan. He comes off a weekend in which he stopped 65 of 67 against Penn State, and it's basically what he's been doing all season long. What's it like for the rest of the team that know, even in those rare moments when you make a mistake, the guy between the pipes usually erases it?
Yeah, I mean, he's obviously had such a great year, and I think he is the best goalie in the country, and he's shown it. It's really good to have somebody you can rely upon. Where if as a team you're going to make mistakes, but he's going to be back there and he's ready to stop it. So he's been huge, and another guy that's been a big part of our team.
I know this is a family affair inside Big Ten hockey for you. Your brother Chaz played at Minnesota for a year. How much trash talk is there between you guys, especially when the Gophers and the Badgers face off against each other? Yeah,
I mean, not too much. I think for both of us, we're no matter where we are, we're super happy for each other, and he's been there for me, ever since we were kids. So for both of us, it's just being excited for each other wherever we are, and support always. So.
I mean, you're both NHL draft picks. How much did you guys dream about that kind of growing up, and what's it like to know that actually became reality?
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously a huge accomplishment, but I think it's something we both worked really hard towards, and obviously him being close and me, I would say kind of following in his suit, I guess, has been pretty cool, and it's been a huge accomplishment for us, and obviously a great opportunity.
I know he's out for the year with injury, second year in a row, I think, in the A, that he's been sidelined by a season-ending injury. What has he told you about kind of that next level, and what maybe it takes for you to be able to go from college then to a league like the A, but then to be able to maybe make that next step and get the call up to actually play in the NHL?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's been a big part of showing me kind of that. And it's obviously, he's told me it's a lot harder. Guys are a lot stronger, more physical. So it's just kind of that extra step that he's kind of explained to me.
All right, Cruz, let's finish with this. You guys know what you need to do this weekend. You need to win one game in regulation. The second game you can win, but it has to be in a shootout or obviously in overtime or in regulation. So how does Wisconsin get the job done this weekend, beat Michigan State twice, win the Big Ten, and get that auto bid all the way into the semifinals?
Yeah, I think it's like I said, for our team success is, living in the moment, whether it's today in practice, our lift we already had this morning, not really looking at that Friday game, but kind of focusing on what we have to do to get there and, to be as prepared as possible. So, and when that time comes, we'll be ready. So I think it's just taking it day by day, obviously having it in the back of your mind and just being ready to go.
It is the kind of series that all of us hockey fans are so excited to watch. Both games this weekend on Big Ten Plus. Cruz Lucius, we appreciate the time. Best of luck this weekend. Can't wait to watch.
Thank you for your time.
A few minutes left here on this edition of Big Ten Today. Of course, Thursday marks leap year, an occasion we get to celebrate only once every 4 years. So in the spirit of leap year, Trent is going to share with you the players that he thinks have made the biggest in-season jumps this year. Well played by you and our producer, Pavlos, as well. And we start with your alma mater and Marcus Domas and what he's done for the Illini.
And I'd say first, it's not easy to make these individual improvements during the season, but for Marcus Domas, and this is somewhat rare as a fifth-year guy, but he is at a new school, non-conference play, just over 11 points a game. In conference play, 18 points a game. Obviously, Terrence Shannon went out for a portion of that time. I think that helped him take more responsibility. But for Marcus, it's always about being aggressive. He's been more aggressive. When he's doing that, he's one of the best scorers, one of the most difficult matchups in our league.
We've talked a little bit about Nick Martinelli and what he has meant to Northwestern, especially after the injury to Ty Berry and what Northwestern had to do to make up for that loss. Martinelli's been terrific.
He has, and this is more about the opportunity for him. He's played 35 minutes a game the last 5, averaging 10.5 points, 7.5 a rebound. So this is a guy that I think there was a lot of question marks, and a very different player from Ty Berry, obviously. One of the most unique players. Almost awkward with his game, but terrific footwork, a fantastic feel from about 15 feet and in as a lefty, can step away and knock down threes as well. So a tough matchup because he's just a different type of player.
The lefty just makes it a little bit more difficult for the defender, too. You just don't see it all that often. It can be awkward, but it can also be smooth when he shoots that left-handed jump shot, and effective, which is most important. Mackenzie Mbako, he came in, I think, with a lot of pub, but it was the element of trying to work himself in to the game plan and really try to figure out what Mike Woodson wanted from him.
There's a few things here, but, with Mbako, 6'8", 215 pounds. I mean, he had the frame coming in, but I think it's his motor, it's his competitiveness, learning how to compete at this level. First 5 games of the season, only 1 game in double figures. He's only had, 4 of his first 5 single figures. He's only had 4 games since then, so in single figures. So he's been a consistent player when he's rebounding the ball. I think that sets him apart. With his frame, he can shoot it from the outside, also attacking the basket. He's a pro, that's for sure, but it's been fun to watch his progression just become more confident, more competitive, his discipline on the defensive end as well.
In Iowa City, Tony Perkins still going to run the show. We saw Peyton Sanford with the triple-double on Tuesday night, but Josh Dix has really provided a great spark late in the year.
So they were 0-3. First 3 conference games. They inserted him into the starting lineup. Now they're 9-6. He hasn't been quite as consistent, but put up 20 points the last 2 nights. I look at his shooting numbers, 56, 43% from 3, 88% from the free throw line. So shooting great. He's got to shoot the ball more because when he does, he can light it up like anybody.
Yeah, when you can open things up from the outside as well, that opens it up down low for Owen Freeman. We don't think he's hit the freshman wall, but he's gotten in more foul trouble as of late, a guy who obviously Iowa relied on a lot early in the year. And lastly, speaking of big guys down low, I love your selection of Pharrell Payne because he has figured out a way to actually play the game. He's always been a physical specimen, has that advantage over everybody he plays. Now he's a fundamentally solid big.
I think that's the key because he's made a big leap from his freshman year to sophomore year, but throughout the course of the season, I've seen his confidence grow again. I think he could be more confident or more consistent. It's about believing he can be a go-to guy. Look at that game against Rutgers, 21-11, going up against a guy like Cliff Amore. We've seen that spin move, his drop step, finishing with both hands around the basket. Could still improve his free throw shooting. That's the next step for him. But it's been fun, again, watching his progression. He's going to bring some pain here to close out the season.
Well, it's the day before Leap Day, but we hope you enjoy that rare February 29th, the extra day on your calendar. For Trent, I'm Rick. Thanks for the hang on Big Ten Today.